Welcome to Introduction to Compound Interest. Today's lecture is for people who've never learned about it mathematically. You know that in the bank you're getting compound interest, but you still don't understand. This is for beginners. One thing you'll notice from outdoors, I keep having aircraft flying over. So instead of me treating it as a problem, I treat it as fun. It adds interest to the lecture. And I expect to hear one or two more aircraft during the lecture. This is my first outdoor math lecture. Just a reminder, I have two YouTubes, Variety and Fun Math. That's unrelated to math for most people. Martin Tutorials is only mathematics. As today's lecture is an introduction to, it's going to be uploaded to both YouTubes. And the whole point of compound interest is that you get interest on interest. So if you just forget about numbers, you put a certain amount in the bank, at the end of the year they add on an amount which is the interest. For the following year, your interest is on that total amount, that principal amount and that interest. That's what you get interest on. Compound interest includes interest on interest. So what I'm going to do now is show you the mathematics and then simplify it into a formula. And to make it easier, I'm going to use simple numbers. Let's pretend you put $100 into a bank account. They tell you you're going to get 10% interest and it will sit there for 3 years. So I'm going to go through each year and afterwards I'm going to reach a formula. And remember, to calculate interest, it's a number divided by 100. So if I say you're going to get 7% interest on something, you're going to add on your amount times 7 over 100. So to begin with, here's your $100. You've just put it in. By the end of the year, they add on 100 plus 10 over 100. That's 10%, which simplifies to 10%, $10. So now you've got 100 plus 10 gives you $110. That's year number one. Year number two, now you've got 110 sitting there, right? They're going to take that 110, that's the total amount. The principal is what you put in, that's the principal and the interest. What they're going to add on is 110 times 10 over 100, which gives you $11. So that $110, they add on 11, you get $121. Now at the end of the 2 years, you're sitting with $121. By the end of the third year, they take 121 times by 10 over 100, and you get $12.10. That 121, we add on $12.10. That's $133.10. So $100 for 3 years at 10% compounded annually is $133.10. That's the slower method, and I've made it 3 years for obvious reasons. If I did it 9 years, I'd be sitting here a long time. So that's first introduction to compound interest. So I'm going to explain. Let's just, for example, start at the beginning of year 2 when you had 110. Okay, we said what we took 110 and we added on we added on 10 over 100. Okay, we took 100 plus 10% is 100 plus 10 over 100, and that gave us $121. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it like this. I just chose the beginning of the second year. We had 110 times 1, that's 110, and we added on 110 times 10 over 100. That's we're adding on the interest by the end of that year. Okay, now I'm going to read you the same formula except we don't know the numbers. Here we're told we're starting off with $110, we're going to get 10%. Let's say we're told the beginning of this year we start off with X and we're going to earn I interest. I is the amount over 100. So 7%, I would be 7 over 100. Okay, so that would be X times 1 that's x plus 1, x times 1 plus x times I. This formula is the exact same as that one. The only difference is here we know the numbers, here we do not. We're told that's 110, here we're told that's x. That's 110 times 10 over 100. That's x times I. I is the unknown amount over 100. That simplifies to x times 1 plus I. Think of it this way. If I've got 4 pencils, I add on 3 pencils, I'll get 4 plus 3 pencils. I've got 1 lots of x, I add on I lots of x, I have 1 plus I lots of x. Okay? So that means instead of saying 110 times 1 plus 110 times 10 over 100, I could just simplify it to 100 times 1 plus 10 over 100. It's exact same as I did here, except there we don't know the numbers. I used x and I, and here I used 110%. And of course, 10 over 100 is the same as saying 0.1, and 1 plus 0.1 is also like saying just 1.1. All right? So now I'm going to start from the beginning again. There's that $100, and this means each year we multiply by 1.1, because I just explained 110 times 1 plus 10 over 100, which simplifies to 1.1. Great. So here's $100. After the 1 year, we've times by 1.1. That's what we're starting off at the start of the next year. By the end of the year, we'll have $100 times 1.1 times 1.1. So if we went back to what I was doing earlier at the beginning, and I said this is the amount after 2 years, and I remember here we go, after 2 years I got $121. If I multiply that out, I should get the same number. And this is after 2 years. So 100 times 1.1 times 1.1 is what's sitting at the end of the second year. By the end of the third year, what do? We have to multiply it by 1.1 again. So after 3 years, it's 100 times 1.1 times 1.1 times 1.1, which simplifies as 100 times 1.1 to the 3. And so that brings us to this formula. S equals P times 1 plus I to the N. These letters might vary depending on the course, the textbook, where you're learning, different places. But in general, S is the accumulated amount. P is the principal amount you're putting in. I is the interest. N is the number of years. It can also mean take on other meanings like compounding periods. But for this lesson, we're talking about number of years. So we earlier on, when we had P is 100, I is 10, and N is 3. That's exactly what we have. There's 100 times, where is it? Where my fingers? That's 100 times 1.1 to the 3. That's P times 1 plus I to the N. Exact same formula. The only difference is we know what P, I, and N is. There we don't. Accumulated is the principal times 1 plus the interest for the number of times, which is 3. So okay, so now that we understand interest, always to give mathematics meaning, I always make up questions to show how it works. Okay, we've got $80, and we put it in a bank account for 7 years, and we want to see how much it is. $80, 7% rather, for 11 years. What will it accumulate to? That's our formula. That accumulated amount is principal times 1 plus I to the N. 80 times 1.07 to the 11, and that comes to $168.39. And that 1.07 to the 11 is a quick way of saying times 1.07 times 1.07 times 1.07. The next year we times by 1.07, and then the year after that times 1.7, 11 times. Instead of multiplying it out 11 times, we just say the power of 11. All right, this is a beginner's course, but I'm going to go just one step further. We want to accumulate $1,000 after 4 years. Interest is 5%. How much do we put in? This is the same question to that previous, except the previous question said we put in this amount, what does it accumulate to? Now we're saying is, if we want to accumulate it to this amount, how much do we put in? It's the exact same formula, except we fill in what we do know and we leave out what we don't know. We give an S, we have to calculate P. So there it is. 1,000 equals P times 1.05 to the 4. 1,000 equals P times 1.05 to the 4. It's the same as that formula, except we don't know what P is. And if we do the arithmetic, now if I say, if I say 10 is 2 times 5, it means 10 divided by 5 is 2. If I say 1,000 is P times that bracket to the 4, it means 1,000 divided by that bracket to the 4 equals P. And that's the same as saying 1,000 times 1.05 to the minus 4, or you can just leave it like that. We plug in our calculator. P is $822.70. So if we put $822.70 into this account, after 4 years, it'll accumulate to $1,000. Now that's the introduction to compound interest. And as you learn more, it gets more and more complex. What if the interest rate changes after a certain time? What if after 3 years it's divided into 2 different accounts with different interests? What if it's for 10 years, the third year you add in an extra $10, after the 9th year you remove $200? What happens then? What if it's compounded at different times, not just each year, etc., etc. But that's the introduction to compound interest, and I hope you learned something. Talk to you soon.